Down here, guys. Down here. Hi. Hey. This movie kind of did me in. I'm so angry. I'm just in this corner right now, next to the socket. Yeah. So, ow. Yeah, so the movie I'm talking about today is none other than Collateral Beauty. The movie I screamed about in one of my very last trailer reaction videos, and you can kind of understand why. So now, since about 3 years since the movie's been out, I finally watched it. And even all this time, I was not prepared. So we have our main character here, the lovely Will Smith, which you would end up hating by the end of this movie. Here, he's talking about the 3 concepts that I yelled about in the trailer reaction. Love, time, and death. And he's stacking those goddamn domino pieces. Does that have anything to really do with the plot of the story? I don't know. Let's fucking see. So 3 years later, yeah, that's how the movie goes. Starts off with a happy Will Smith being like, love, death, time, I'm happy, I'm Will Smith. To suddenly 3 years later, he's stacking a shit ton of dominoes, really depressed. Alright. So it's around Christmas time, and here we have Kate Winslet and Ed Norton. They work together with Will Smith, along with Michael Pena, and Ed Norton's thinking about, hiring a PI on Will Smith's character. I guess, when someone's that depressed, I guess you need a PI? So Kate Winslet has a moment of exposition where she talks about how Will Smith's kid died 2 years prior. Okay. I get why you're depressed, dude. So, due to Will Smith, who I guess is the head of this company they work at, due to the fact that he's fucking depressed as shit, their company's kind of starting to go, starting to dip. And they're all kind of worried about their jobs and money because they're adults and stuff. So, yeah. So here are 3 supporting characters, which really are more the main characters. Will Smith is the supporting character, I guess you would say. And that's the PI, the lady that looks like she goes to a Mormon church or something. Anyway, so the PI tells the 3 that he writes letters to these concepts. The letter, as we saw in the trailer, he writes letters to these concepts. He writes it to love, death, and time. Which, that doesn't sound crazy at all. It's I guess that's a way to mourn, and I bet the people who work at the post office are like, here we go again, into the trash, along with the Santa letters, So the 3 are trying to prove that Will Smith is not mentally stable enough to do his job. Which I guess, someone mourning that much, you're giving him, 2 years of mourning, and then they're like, alright, okay, our jobs, the annual numbers and stuff, fine. This is Ed Norton's kid, and she hates him because he, cheated on the mom. Understandable. So, businessy business talk, blah, blah, blah. Alright, so, one day, Ed Norton goes, he goes and, follows, Keira Knightley to this place, and they're being all Shakespearean things and Shakespearean stuff. And so he meets these actors, and he pitches the idea to have these actors play these concepts, to play, death, love, and time and shit and stuff, to bring it to fruition. So yay. Which I have to say is much different than what you saw in the trailer, which the trailer made it seem like he was losing his shit, and then these actual concepts, came to be. But now it's oh, actually, we're really selfish colleagues, and we're so worried more about money than the mental health of our colleague and friend and boss and stuff, that we're willing to, make him look like shit, on camera, to be look at that! You done fucked. You can't do your job or have money or ever be happy. Okay. So it's wow. So far it seems mainly Ed Norton is the shitty person, but at the same time Michael Pena and Kate Winslet are also down for it, so they're kind of shitty, but Ed Norton being like the ringleader of it is like the shittier person. And then Will Smith is just like there in the movie so far, just brooding. Like Bruce Wayne at least became Batman. Like, what are you doing, dude? So yeah, Ed Norton, he talks to Kate Winslet and Michael Pena, kind of pitches the idea like, hey, so we're gonna do this, and then we'll just capture it on camera and like edit out the actors so it looks like he's talking to no one and all that stuff. So blah blah blah, like this is the idea. Like we're just gonna like, fuck with this guy because money. Because also his like the company is supposed to like I think they're supposed to be bought or something or sold or whatever shit. And so then they can like make a lot of money. And since Will Smith has just been like pushing like that paper to the side and building his damn dominoes, they're like, but money. I don't know, whatever. And so they all meet up with the three actors, and they're all trying to decide like, I'll be death, I'll be love, I'll be time, I'll be fleur. And it's funny because there's three of those actors, and then there's three of them in, like the crew. And it's funny how they all get paired off because of what their idea and concepts are. It's like, oh wow, you guys got paired off perfectly with your thing. Because it's like Michael Pena gets paired off with Death, with Helen Mirren. Kate Winslet gets paired off with Time, the black kid. And then Keira Knightley, Love, who gets paired off with Ed Norton. Which, as I already said, Ed Norton, had cheated on, like, his wife or ex-wife. So it's like, oh, it's funny that he's with Love, Michael Pena's with Death because, he apparently has cancer, and it's one of those movies where they want to throw in cancer out of nowhere, because, and Kate Winslet, paired off with Time because, she's an older woman. She probably thinks, like, my biological clock, oh no, I want to have kids. And, we're just like 30 minutes into the movie, and yeah, we're going here. So the next day, Helen Mirren as Death approaches, and, as you saw in the trailer, goes up to Will Smith, she's like, I'm Death, and then, like, presents him one of the letters that, that he wrote her, and they all, like, the PI has access to mailboxes, because that's not wrong. And, she's collected all the letters, so, like, they were able to, like, read and research their character and all that shit. Yeah, so after his encounter with Death later that evening, he goes to this kind of, like, grief counseling group. And, they're obviously all talking about, like, losing a loved one and all that stuff, because, it's grief counseling. And then he was watching kind of creepily outside for a while, but then he finally went in, and then the main, like, I guess the one who heads up the counseling, she's like, hi, I'm so-and-so, my child died of this, like a very specific thing, my child died of this rare cancer, and it's like, cool, we're bringing in more cancer into this, awesome, and trying to get Will Smith to open up, and he's not opening up, which, understandable. Once the meeting is over, the head of the grief council thingy, she's like, trying to make, like, have him open up again, but it's also like, it's outside of the group, so it's like a one-on-one, so maybe he can open up, but he's like not opening up, and he seems to be kind of flirting with her, like kind of like, let's go to dinner kind of thing, but she's just like, she keeps repeating the thing, like, my child's name is this, and they died of this rare cancer, and he's just like, like very like, I'm gonna poop, and then he just kind of disappears, and you're like, what? Okay. Then the next day, some more goddamn dominoes. So yeah, this is where we find out that Michael Pena has, like, a blood cancer, and you're like, awesome, dude. There's enough dying happening in this movie, I guess put another person who's dying in it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the movie that, like, oh, everyone's actually dying, or everyone was dead all along, and it's like Lost, where it's like, is this island purgatory? Like, what's this all about? So yeah, a little later in the day, Time shows up, and he's at, like, the office. A lot of times during these, like, encounters, they have other people, like the PI walked by during the Death thing with, like, her nephew, and it's like, who's that man talking to? Just so he could feel like, wow, I'm really talking to no one, like, am I really not having, control over my faculties kind of thing, which is always very comforting. And yeah, so in this scene with Time, they're at his office, you know, around all his goddamn fucking dominoes, and Kate Winslet, you know, like goes in to say something to Will Smith, but then just kind of like walks away and doesn't acknowledge the actor who plays Time, obviously to sell the whole like, you know, nobody sees me and like I only appear to those who need to see me kind of bullshit. So Will Smith kind of argues with Time a little because, you know, he's having like a natural reaction to it. It's not like he completely believes these manifestations are real. He's just like, no, get the fuck out of like my office. What are you doing here? Go away. All that stuff. As much as like they kind of like tell him things that definitely like only he knows because of the letters, blah blah blah. Yeah. So once Time leaves, he's kind of like, the fuck? Like this shit's getting too spot on. Like what's going on? Anyway, Keira Knightley shows up, you know, crying because she's Keira Knightley and she's good at that. And he's like at a diner eating, and he's like, come on, man. He's like, I'm eating. And she's like, Love Actually. I was in Love Actually, and I'm Keira Knightley, and this is me for this whole scene. So that was really it. So they all kind of meet back up at that, like, drama school thing they're at. And they all agree that, you know, he believes that they are all these manifestations of these concepts and stuff. So then the crew, the three, Kay Winslet, Ed Norton, and Michael Pena, they tell the actors that they want him to kind of like lash out in public. The PI can record it and then he could just like, you know, After Effects it, like, you know, chroma key the actors out, you know, so then they could be like, see, look, you know, ooh, our boss can't handle this stuff. Okay, you know, do the, you know, the Johnson report or whatever business people say all the time. So then we meet up with Will Smith, and he's at that grief counselor thing again. The counselor, again, is trying to get him to open up, and, you know, and she keeps doing that whole, like, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. My child died of this cancer and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And you, like, who did you lose? But he's just, like, not, you know, he's not trying to go there, because he always gets really choked up. But he's, like, trying to let her know, like, that probably his grief is causing him to see, you know, like, these manifestations, but, like, she's kind of, like, not wanting to hear it and shit. She hands him this letter that said, like, oh, her husband wrote about how, oh, yeah, there's the letter. It says, if only we could be strangers again. And because it's in, like, this weird letter form and all that stuff, you kind of know that's Will Smith who wrote it, you know? It's like, this movie is trying to act like it's smarter than the audience, and at times the audience could be really dumb. But this is really, really, like, this is a fuck you move. You know, it's one of those movies that are like, we are so much smarter than the audience, and you have no idea. Like, they would not guess. And it's like, no, I had an inkling, like, the first time, like, they met at the grief counseling thing. Like, Jesus. Also, my neck is starting to hurt sitting like this. Grief counselor / ex-wife explains, you know, the title of Collateral Beauty, and fuck you. I'm not even gonna talk about the explanation of that. Just fuck you. Next day, Keira Knightley had decided to drop out of it because she felt really bad for fucking with Will Smith. You know, acting is fine, but when someone else is not doing it, it becomes one of those really bad YouTube pranks. We're like, no, dude, it's just a prank. And it's like, yeah, you put a gun to my head. Like, no. So, of course, Ed Norton is trying to, like, beg her to come back just so they can finish her whatever thing. Plus, it's obvious his character has a thing for her. Oh my god, and then he says this line that says, so he said that when his kid was born, he didn't, like, feel love, he became love. What is that? What is that? Oh, when my child was born, I didn't feel love, I became love. Fuck off! We're coming to the whole, like, let's start, you know, let's start keying out the people thing. So Time shows up on a skateboard following Will Smith on his bike and just starts, you know, kind of poking the bear. Of course, Will Smith is yelling at quote-unquote nobody, and then he decides to walk away. I don't know where the fuck he parked his bike, but then he went down to the Broadway Lafayette stop, even though I think he was around, like, 8th Street and 5th Ave, but whatever. And he's on Broadway Lafayette stop. Again, I don't know where he put his bike. The bike's not with him. Helen Mirren is there as Death, talking to him. Like, okay, cool, why not? And then he starts yelling at her on the subway because, you know, again, she's playing Poke the Bear. And then he gets out of the train, like, not even a stop later. He literally just gets out the train. And he, like, well, technically I think it is a stop later, but, like, the stop he gets out of on the train, you can actually just walk to it. It's not a stop later. Ow, that's a box on my elbow. But anyway, in New York logic, his train didn't move, even though his train looked as if it was going probably 4 different stops during that scene. But whatever, New York City logic aside. So he gets out, he's walking away, and Keira Knightley's there, of course, as Love, and she was just like, you know, pretty much just doing this whole, like, I know you hate me and whatever. Like, whatever. They're just trying to get a reaction out of him. And my main of this whole segment, oh, my neck, was that I wrote it down. I said, good on them for thinking he would only go 1 stop on the train and for the PI to be quick on her feet. Because she was like, right there, filming the whole thing with time. Then I guess she ran into the train with them, and then got off the stop with them, and then got out in time to record all of it. You know, and she's an older woman. I'm like, okay, I guess you good, girl, you good. Hey, look, it's Will Smith the Chipmunk. So they have a meeting about his, like, competency, and they show the edited footage of him, like, yelling at nobody. So he's just, like, watching this over a bajillion screens. Again, you don't really know, like, what kind of company they're working at. Like, they hint that it's, like an ad company, but then, like, it could look like a tech company, like a startup. You don't know. It's a company. Businessy business. Anyway, lots of screens. And they show, like, the footage of him yelling at nobody. And then, of course, like, you know, any regular, normal, functioning person, even Will Smith's, like, depressed self, even looks at the footage and goes, okay, so you guys set this up. Like, how is it that these 3 people I met on random days suddenly are all together on one day, and I'm screaming at them, and it's also recorded? Like, guys, you sure about that? Of course, Kate Winslet starts crying, but even though he calls it out and Kate Winslet starts crying and is, like, you know, trying to sell this to him, he really believes that as much as he called it out and was like, you guys were following me and trying to play Poke the Bear, recorded it, and this is probably doctored footage, after Kate Winslet kind of gives a little sappy little thing, he believes it. He's like, oh my god, maybe the death of my child really has fucked with my head. What? And then during all this, he's, like, telling each and every one of the 3 people, like, you're great because of this. And, like, he has, like, an Oprah moment with them. And it's like, bro, you just got played. And you're like, yeah, well, you know, this is what it is. So the guy, whomever, has him sign the stuff. Yeah, and then you see the 3 just, like, relieved but obviously devastated because they're like, cool, we're selling the company, or his company's being bought out, whatever, but we're gonna make money, so cool, he bought it, we're gonna have money, cool, but then we also feel like shit, because obviously we just played him. Like, you guys are great people. My ass, oh my god, my tailbone hurts. So we're getting to the ass in the movie. The crew, the 3, are starting to reconcile with people in their lives after, I guess, whatever talks they've had with their manifestation people. So Michael Pena, you know, he finally admits to his wife that he's sick, even though he's obviously, like, throwing up his whole body, you know, when we see him next. But he's just like, honey, I'm sick. It's like, yeah, we know. Yeah, it's also good I didn't see this movie when it came out, because the cancer that Michael Pena, like, has in the movie is the exact cancer my dad died of the year that this movie came out. So I'm like, oh, well, good thing I gave this fucking 3 years before I saw it. I would have probably been even more angry at this movie. Which I don't know how much more angry I could be at this fucking movie. So Will Smith goes to his ex-wife's, you know, place on Christmas Eve. Or the grief counselor, because they're still trying to play it out to being like, oh, he's just flirty with this lady that we just met out of nowhere, you know, and all that stuff. And then, like, the woman is like, she keeps repeating the whole, like, my name is so-and-so, my child died of a rare form of cancer, blah, blah, blah. She was only blah, blah, blah years old. and you? Like, she kept doing that, and he just wouldn't say it, and then you go into her living room, and he's freaking, he's crying up a storm to her, and they're playing, like, a whole movie of Will Smith and the daughter, and it's like, there's the reveal, that's your wife, that's your ex-wife, you guys had the child, the thing she's saying is your dead kid, and I was like, wow, I figured that out, like, 30 minutes into the movie! And it's like, are you serious? Like, you really thought we didn't, like, get it? You know, it was like, oh no, there's gonna be no way we would have, like, gotten that. Like, seriously, I feel like if she didn't hand him the letter, I probably would have just had, like, a suspicion of it, and then when this was revealed, I'd be like, alright, cool, I knew it. But the fact that she handed the letter, and what does he do? He writes letters, you know what I mean? And so, then I was like, oh, that has to be it. And then it kind of drags on like, you don't know, we got one over you, but it's like, no, you didn't, you know? So of course, he's finally like, I guess because he's finally admitted to his kid, like, that his kid's dead, and he's really, like, finally crying, like, getting some relief from his grief, that rhymes kind of, that he's deciding to knock down all his dominoes finally. So then the dominoes, like, like, there's a shit ton of them, and you just kind of, like, watch it all come tumbling down, like, okay, this is interesting. And then the dominoes kind of fade into, like, the hospital floor. There's one part where Will Smith is talking to his ex-wife, grief counselor lady, and she was talking about how when she was in the hospital and she didn't know what was going to happen to her kid, there was a random person in the waiting room who, like, spoke to them, and that's where, like, the explanation of the Collateral Beauty thing came out, and so that's how she, like, accepted the kid's death, and why she, I guess, like, has done a lot better than Will Smith, who didn't want to accept any, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, then you're like, what? So you were talking to Helen Mirren? Helen Mirren is death? Is Helen Mirren really death? What? Like, are these manifestations, like, real manifestations of these concepts? And not just these random actors they somehow randomly found? You're like, wait, what are you going at, movie? Where are you going at? So then the movie ends with Will Smith, like, just in Central Park, back with his wife, and he seems a lot happier, he's smiling, he's not just brooding, and you see the three love, death, and time on one of the iron bridges in Central Park. And you're like, okay, and you're looking at this like, wait, so are they really those things? So they're not actors? So they, like, showed up perfectly for Ed Norton to find and then follow Keira Knightley to this place? Okay. So, like, Will Smith sees them, and then when the wife turns around, they're not there. And you're like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, seriously. Like, this movie, oh my god, sitting. This movie, trailer-wise, was saying, hey, this guy is losing his shit, and he's seeing these manifestations. It seems like in the trailer, his friends want to get him help because they're worried. Then you watch the movie and you realize his friends are pieces of shit and all they care about is money and not how he feels mentally. And so they're like, let's fuck with him. Just show that he is fucked up and that we can get our money, and then he can also be happy too because he'll have his money as well. And then you're like, okay, these are terrible people. But then you get towards the end of the movie, and then there's like that weird, you see just how weird the relationship between the ex-wife and him are, because it's just like, wow, obviously both of you deal with grief differently, and so she's like, I'm better now. He's like, well, I'm fucked. And then finally in the end they get better because the three concepts, like, showed him the way. And then you find out that these actors aren't really actors to begin with. They are really actual manifestations of these concepts. Like, people who need us, like, are the only ones who see us, so anyone else don't see us. And it's like, okay, so obviously it makes sense for Kate Winslet, Ed Norton, and Michael Pena to see them because they are in need of them. At the same time, did the PI woman actually see them the entire time? Because if she isn't needed to see them, did she actually see them the entire time? Second of all, because she possibly could or could not see them, after she recorded it, they most likely did not show up on camera. So she probably popped the footage on her computer and went, well, I guess I don't have to edit this out. And so there you go. What the fuck is this movie? Who fucking watched this and were just like, like, I watched this and I was just like, fuck this movie, fuck off, you know? And it's like, damn it, Will Smith, stop trying to go and get your Oscar with these kind of movies. Like, 7 pounds and Pursuit of, like, this fucking shit. Like, dude, yes, you are a good actor. You know, you have range. We all know that. But my God, pick something with a storyline that doesn't make me want to, like, just bite the head off a child. Like, Jesus Christ. And funny enough, like, after this movie came out, he later then made his, like, YouTube page and all that stuff. So, you know, he probably thinks, I can, you know, I might not need an Oscar. I just might need, you know, just that, like, you know, that 10 million plaque, you know? Like, do that. Like, I thought this was a good idea. Oh my God. I need to get off the floor, because everything hurts. This floor is hard.